What would you do if you fell 2 miles from an exploding plane or drifted alone at sea for over a year? These aren't hypothetical questions. They're real stories of people who faced impossible odds and somehow survived. Today, we're counting down 6 of the most unbelievable survival stories ever recorded. These are true, verified accounts that will leave you speechless. Let's dive in. Juliane Köpke, the girl who fell from the sky. Imagine falling 2 miles from an exploding plane and surviving. That's exactly what happened to 17-year-old Juliane Köpke on Christmas Eve 1971. But surviving the fall, that was just the beginning of her nightmare in the Amazon. On Christmas Eve 1971, 17-year-old Juliane Köpke and her mother boarded Lanza Flight 508 in Lima, Peru, excited to reunite with her biologist father deep in the Amazon rainforest. Halfway through the journey, the plane flew into a severe thunderstorm. A lightning strike caused catastrophic damage. The aircraft broke apart mid-air at around 10,000 feet. Still strapped to her row of seats, Juliane tumbled through the sky for nearly 3 minutes before crashing into the dense jungle canopy, which slowed her descent enough to save her life. She awoke the next day, concussed and injured. A broken collarbone, deep cuts on her arm and leg, a torn knee ligament, and one eye swollen shut. She was the only survivor of the 92 people on board. For the next 11 days, alone in the vast rainforest, she relied on survival tips from her parents. Following a small stream downstream toward civilization, finding a few candies to eat, and pouring gasoline from wreckage onto her wounds to keep insects away. Battling heavy rain, hunger, and exhaustion, she pressed on until, on day 11, she reached a remote lumber camp where workers found her and arranged medical rescue. Juliane Köpke's incredible survival, plummeting from the sky and conquering the unforgiving jungle, remains one of the most astonishing tales of human endurance in history. Vesna Vulovic. What would you do if the plane you were on suddenly exploded 6 miles above Earth? For 22-year-old Vesna Vulovic, this wasn't a hypothetical, it was her reality. And somehow, she lived to tell the tale. On January 26, 1972, 22-year-old flight attendant Vesna Vulovic was working aboard JAT Yugoslav Airlines, Flight 367 from Stockholm to Belgrade. Mid-flight over Czechoslovakia, a bomb hidden in the baggage compartment exploded, tearing the DC-9 aircraft apart at 33,300 feet, the highest altitude ever survived in a plane disaster. Vesna, trapped in the tail section with a food cart pinning her in place, plummeted for over 3 minutes as the wreckage spun toward the ground. The section crashed into a snow-covered mountainside in a forested village, where the frozen slope and dense trees cushioned the impact. Rescuers found her alive amid the debris, the only survivor of the 28 people on board, with a fractured skull, broken legs, and 3 crushed vertebrae that left her temporarily paralyzed from the waist down. Doctors were amazed she survived at all. The food cart and her low blood pressure likely helped to prevent fatal shock. After months of rehabilitation, she regained the ability to walk and even campaigned for her job back, though the airline retired her on medical grounds. Vesna Vulovic holds the Guinness World Record for the highest fall survived without a parachute. Her incredible survival, plummeting from cruising altitude and walking away months later, remains one of the most astonishing tales of human endurance in history. Aaron Ralston. He had 2 choices: die slowly in that canyon or do the unthinkable. For 27-year-old Aaron Ralston, trapped alone with his arm crushed under 800 pounds of rock, the clock was ticking, and help wasn't coming. In April 2003, 27-year-old experienced mountaineer Aaron Ralston set out for a solo canyoneering adventure in the remote Blue John Canyon, part of Utah's Canyonlands National Park. He hadn't told anyone his plans, expecting a routine day exploring the narrow slot canyons. While descending a tight section, an 800-pound boulder suddenly shifted, pinning his right arm against the canyon wall and trapping him in place. For the next 5 days, 127 hours total, Ralston rationed his limited water and food, chipped futilely at the rock with a multi-tool, and recorded video messages to his family, believing rescue wouldn't come. Dehydrated and weakening, he faced hallucinations and carved his name and presumed final date into the sandstone. On the 6th day, in a moment of clarity, he realized the only escape was to apply torque to break his forearm bones, then use the tool to free himself. Afterward, he rappelled one-handed down a 65-foot drop and hiked several miles until a family spotted him and called for help. Aaron Ralston's incredible survival, trapped alone and conquering unimaginable odds in the canyon, remains one of the most astonishing tales of human endurance in history. Uruguayan rugby team. Surviving a plane crash is one thing. Surviving 72 days, trapped in a frozen hell at 11,000 feet with no food, no rescue, and your friends dying around you? That's something else entirely. This is what happened to a Uruguayan rugby team in 1972, and the impossible choices they had to make to stay alive. On October 13, 1972, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, carrying a young rugby team, their families, and supporters from Montevideo to Chile, flew into thick clouds over the Andes Mountains. The pilots miscalculated their position and descended too early. The Fairchild FH-227D clipped a ridge, ripping off both wings and the tail before crashing on a remote glacier at over 11,000 feet. Of the 45 people on board, 33 survived the initial impact, but avalanches, freezing temperatures, and severe injuries quickly reduced their numbers. Stranded in one of the harshest environments on Earth, with no food, inadequate clothing, and no rescue in sight, the survivors faced weeks of starvation. After 72 days, with hope fading, two members, Fernando Parado and Roberto Canessa, embarked on a grueling 10-day trek across the mountains to find help, climbing peaks without gear. Their journey led rescuers back to the crash site, saving the remaining 14 who had waited on the glacier. The survivors' incredible endurance, facing extreme cold, isolation, and desperate choices in the Andes, remains one of the most astonishing tales of human endurance in history. José Salvador Alvarenga, 438 days. That's how long José Salvador Alvarenga drifted across 6,700 miles of open ocean with nothing but a broken boat, the scorching sun, and eventually, complete isolation. Most people wouldn't last 438 hours. Here's how he survived over a year at sea. In November 2012, Salvadoran fisherman José Salvador Alvarenga and his 23-year-old crewmate Ezequiel Cordoba set out from Mexico's Pacific coast for a routine one-day shark fishing trip. A powerful storm soon blew them far offshore, destroying their engine and radio. They drifted helplessly into the vast Pacific Ocean. For the first month, they survived on raw fish, turtles, and birds they caught by hand, plus rainwater collected in containers. Tragically, after 4 months, Cordoba lost hope and stopped eating, passing away, leaving Alvarenga completely alone. For the remaining time, over a year total, Alvarenga battled intense isolation, sunburn, thirst, and storms, eating whatever he could catch, drinking turtle blood and his own urine when rain failed. He kept his mind sharp by talking to Cordoba's body for weeks before committing it to the sea, and later singing and praying daily. After drifting more than 6,700 miles across the ocean, his small fiberglass boat washed ashore on a remote atoll in the Marshall Islands in January 2014. Rescuers found him weak but alive, the longest documented solo survival at sea. José Salvador Alvarenga's incredible survival, adrift for 438 days across endless ocean, remains one of the most astonishing tales of human endurance in history. Harrison O'Keefe. Deep underwater, in pitch-black darkness, with sharks circling outside and your air running out, how long could you survive? For Harrison O'Keefe, trapped 100 feet below the surface in a sunken ship, this nightmare lasted 60 hours. And against all odds, he made it out alive. In May 2013, Nigerian cook Harrison O'Keefe was aboard the tugboat Jascon 4, assisting with oil operations off the coast of Nigeria in the Atlantic Ocean. Around 4:30 a.m., a sudden swell capsized the vessel. It sank rapidly to the seabed 100 feet below, taking 12 crew members with it. O'Keefe, in the bathroom at the time, was swept into an air pocket inside an engineer's cabin as water flooded the ship. For nearly 60 hours, almost 3 full days, he remained trapped in complete darkness, breathing the shrinking bubble of air surrounded by cold seawater and the bodies of his crewmates. Sharks and fish circled outside the wreckage, occasionally bumping the hull. O'Keefe rationed a single bottle of Coca-Cola and prayed constantly to stay calm, hearing search boats pass overhead without detecting him. On the third day, South African rescue divers sent to recover bodies were stunned when O'Keen's hand reached out from the darkness. He was the only survivor. Medics treated him for decompression in a hyperbaric chamber. Harrison O'Keen's incredible survival, trapped alone underwater for nearly 3 days in a sunken ship, remains one of the most astonishing tales of human endurance in history. These 6 people faced death and refused to give up. Their stories remind us just how resilient humans can be when survival is the only option. Which story shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible true stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.